Welcome to the webinar that's been facilitated by the British Library. This webinar is called Single Mums in Business and Flexible Working. Thank you to all of those of you who have joined us. It's very strange. This is the first time I've done a webinar, so having lots of people here that I can't see or hear is strange. I'm used to talking to people, but you can all make your videos and voices heard at the end of the session. So this webinar, as you will be aware by the title, is essentially about how for many years single parenting has carried a certain stigma, and we've all been working incredibly hard to provide a happy, healthy and financially comfortable home for our children. And there are hundreds, thousands, if not millions of parents doing this. So what we're trying to do now is we need to sort of start to remove some of those barriers, and we need to reduce some of that stigma, and we need to show ourselves as single parents, and we need to say, look, you know, it's not what stereotyping makes it out to be. Television are very good at always showing the extreme hardship or the rough edges, if you like, of kind of single parenting or relative poverty and things like that. So we need to talk about it as a more honest and normal conversation, and we need to share these genuine challenges that we're having, and we need to help educate people who are in a position to make these changes to actually make them, because actually the impact of that on the UK economy and on everybody's well-being is so profound, it's insane. And the only reason that these changes haven't already been made is because people are genuinely ignorant. And whenever I use the word ignorance, I mean it with the utmost respect. And the reason I can do that is because I was genuinely ignorant before I became a single mum. I wasn't a horrible person. I didn't not care. I just was genuinely ignorant to these challenges. I had no idea that everybody would be looking for work that would fit in with childcare or school. I just didn't know. I was quite happy in my bubble of 9 to 5, which was often 8 to 7. As I know that many of us, I've chosen Lydia and Nahaya and Sarah to co-host this webinar with me today, because I've talked to them very organically over the past 12 months, and I've realised that similarly to me, they have gone through that transition where we were working, and actually what we really wanted to do was just continue in the sanctuary of employment and salaries, but that was such a challenge, and we've all got different experiences that you've all shared with me privately, that I think maybe if the public realise why we go into self-employment. So I've got my slides here, I'm not following them at all, this is my problem, I just talk. Self-employment is wonderful, it's fulfilling and it's empowering, and you know, we're using our skill sets and we're using our brains and we're giving ourselves an opportunity to earn the money that we know we're worth. But at the same time, we need to, it's always very glamorized. Oh, I'm a woman in business, I'm a self-employed single mum, you know, there's a very glamorous public kind of perspective of that. But the reality is, it's very, very difficult when you are constantly trying to bring in a stable and steady income that's sufficient not only to pay your outgoings of your business, but to pay your overheads of your cost of living and to draw a wage. So this is something that we really need support with. There's so many things we need to talk about, so I'm going to have to try and do this in order. We need to discuss the policy change around flexible working, around single mums in business and primary carers. The reason I say primary carers is I think that the challenges that we face are probably similar for any primary carer. So whether that's a single dad or married parents, where obviously one of them is in a situation where it is too complicated or too difficult to go to work, so they decide that one stays at home, so consequently the family income is divided in half. But also carers, not only of dependents as in children, but carers with other caring responsibilities, perhaps for their parents or a loved one, a husband or a wife, who's had some sort of injury. All of these situations, in all of these circumstances, there are people who could probably, for some hours of the week, enjoy a nice stable income through salaried employment. And this is what we really need to look at. So there are lots of misconceptions, which I will elaborate on as we go through. And salaries is something we need to speak about generally, because it's quite simply not enough what the majority of people are paid. You know, we have government guidance on what the minimum wage should be, and lots of employers use that government guidance as an excuse to pay as little as they can get away with, instead of actually looking inwardly about the cost of living and their employees and how their employees are managing and what they can actually afford to pay. They're paying the minimum they can get away with and legally justify, and living an affluent lifestyle at the cost of their employees. And it's something I'm not afraid to address, and it's not something I'm afraid to ask people to make them accountable for. So I've talked for 8 minutes, which is long enough, so I'm just going to do 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to bring in Sarah, and then I'm going to talk a bit more before I bring in one of the others. So essentially, jobs are still 9 to 5. Which most of you watching this, we've got all sorts of people watching today. Hang on a minute, I've just realised 6 people are waiting to come in. It's quite difficult managing this when you're doing it. Remind me next time to get an administrator or something. So jobs are still 9 to 5, which just doesn't allow the travel time to childcare. It does if you're very lucky. Hi Louise, thanks for joining us. I'm really sorry, but as I've been letting people in one by one, I've asked the attendees to keep the videos off until the last 15 minutes of the webinar, so that we can maintain the space which we're recording and sharing. So we've got a real restriction with this 9 to 5 mindset. Now, things are changing. We've got some fantastic agencies out there. We've got some fantastic part-time flexible working agencies. We've got some fantastic employers who are embracing change, but you know, there are billions and billions and billions of us out there, and it's just nowhere near enough. So for those who don't fall into the few jobs that are available as a job share or as a 0.6 full-time equivalent and 0.8 full-time equivalent, those people are effectively forced out of the workplace for the sake of what? A little bit of presenteeism. I've worked in many jobs over the years where, you know, at 4 o'clock I'm clock watching and I'm just sitting there just in case the phone rings at 2 minutes to 5. And I know I'm not alone with that. By the majority of UK employers still refusing to embrace this, just a little bit of flexibility or a little bit of working from home or a little bit of movement there with a 9 to 5, what they're effectively doing is pushing people into needing benefits, or working in a very low skilled, low paid job, which is fine if that's where you're at academically and physically, but if you're not there, then forcing somebody to basically half their salary and do something that doesn't enable them to be financially independent, you are still increasing the UK benefits bill, which the welfare bill, the taxes, UK public sector expenditure, so the taxes for welfare in 2016-2017, this is the sources, the HM Treasury, was £172 billion in 1 year. Now that's insane when you think how much of that could be reduced by proper paid roles that can easily be managed within childcare hours. Personally, I think that every role should be 24k 30k pro rata, so 24k in childcare hours, because that's enough in most parts of the UK to be able to pay your rent and bills independently and have enough disposable income just to manage quite comfortably and save up for the odd holiday or rainy day funds. So we've got a long way to go to get there. So consequently, what we have is, if you don't want to be forced long term into a very low waged role or long term dependency on benefits, what we do is we fight for self-employment. Hi Shannon, just take the camera off for a little while because we're just keeping the four of us on screen until the last 15 minutes when we're going to invite everyone in to say hi. So consequently, you know, if we don't want to look at struggling for the next 15 years, we think, okay, let's work from home so that we can be there for our children, and let's do everything that we can to earn enough money through our business so that we are completely financially independent, so that we can earn somewhere in the region of, you know, £500 a week, so that we can just be independent on our own and manage without struggling. So if anybody's just joined the meeting, if you wouldn't mind ensuring that your cameras are off until the last 15 minutes. I've still got people coming in now. I think there may have been some problems with passwords there, so I apologise for any of you who have been struggling to come in to join. Like I said, this is recording, so anything that you've missed, you can play back afterwards anyway. So personally, I can go back to my experiences with trying to get employment that matched my skill set and my salary after I became mum. So I think, just for change of scenery, Sarah, would you mind just sharing kind of the journey for you from employment to being a single mum to then trying to get that balance right, and then obviously this consequential self-employment?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was a lecturer for 16 years and last year, a year ago, May last year, I came out of work, sort of forced out of quite a toxic environment, and went on to benefits because I didn't have another choice. I also had to, because I've got a house and a mortgage, I had to start renting my house out to be able to pay my bills, because I couldn't cover it. And obviously my ex-employers were aware of that if they made me, or if they put me in a position where I had to leave, that as a single mum, I didn't have any other options to keep, to pay my mortgage and pay my bills, but that was disregarded. Excuse me. So I was forced onto benefits and to rent my house out to be able to keep it, to pay my bills. Because when I phoned my mortgage company and explained the situation, for example, they said they could potentially give me a mortgage break, but it would go against my credit file. So I was already stuck, as far as, because we need to be able to have, where possible, a good credit file in order to benefit other things in the future or as we need them. So I carried on paying my mortgage, but by renting my house out in order to pay it. Then I had various help from the job centre and from a company. It's based in Liverpool, and it's designed to get you work. I've never so far been given one option from the job centre that would suit my skill set or my qualifications. I'm qualified to master's level, and I would travel every 2 weeks, about 40 minutes, to see this other company, and the woman was lovely, but again, the only things that she could offer me that would work for me as a single mum were admin jobs that were a couple of hours a week that I couldn't really take on because I still couldn't manage it. It wouldn't have benefited me to try and travel a distance to work a few hours a week. And also because I've got an academic background, I don't have sort of an office job background. Prior to working as a lecturer, I was a manager in retail and an area manager. So I've got sort of other skills other than my education. I've got skills that are dealing with people, dealing with the public, and I don't really know an office environment, so I was limited with that. So she was trying to get me to apply for other jobs. In the end, I was acquiescing, and she was putting them things forward, but nothing was coming from it. Then the only other thing that could be offered to me was working on phone lines for banks and things like that. But I went to an open day for one of them, for Santander, and within the first 10 minutes, the manager had stood up and said, you have to be available 8 till 8, 7 days a week. And so he said his spiel, and I sort of put my hand up and asked, I said, well, I'm a single mum and I can't be available, even if I were, willing to do 8 till 8, but I can't as a, it doesn't mean 12-hour days, sorry, within the parameters of that. I can't, because I've got a daughter and I can't leave her on her own. And he said, that's it. That's the availability. There's nothing else. So by the time he'd finished his spiel, then I had to get up and leave, and there was no other option for me. So I have found it very limiting. I haven't been able to get any work. In fact, the only work I did get, and it was just before lockdown, was I got some agency work covering in schools, and I got a few bits actually. I got that. I got examining for Cambridge. I got some teaching for a company. You go in the holidays where parents send their kids to get extra tuition, and that was down in London for 4 days. And I got the lead invigilator at my daughter's school to cover all the summer exams. So there were bits of work that I could do within those hours, and so certainly the one in Grace's school, I could do it while she was in school. But obviously all that got pulled because of lockdown, so a lot of it went. But prior to that, I didn't have any opportunity for any job that would have worked for me. So even saying, as a single parent, I can do up to, say, 5 o'clock, but I would need some flexibility, because sustaining that every day would be difficult with being on my own. And there was nothing. There was just, I could see the blank looks. And I went to an open day at the job centre and spoke to lots of different companies who were touting for business, even the police. And they said, no, you have to start as full-time, you have to come full-time, and our hours are shift work. So again, that would be office work. I just came out of it feeling disheartened, because there wasn't anything, I just didn't find in that year anything available for me that worked with my skill set, but also enabled me that flexibility, or had the money to do that. And in lecturing, I mean, even when I got my master's, the pay didn't go up. I was on 30,000, and that was the top. That was it. It wasn't going to go any higher. And you work long days. Now, I had some allowance for flexibility there, depending on when my lessons finished. But when I asked for more, I was told no. So I was allowed 2 days a week to leave at 3 o'clock, but I had to stay other days to make those hours up. So I had to make sure she was covered. I've since learned that my boss comes in at 10:30 and leaves at 3 every day, but I wasn't afforded that because she's had a child since. So there's such inequality and there's such an imbalance. And when you come out, and it's exactly like you said before, Jules, I was ignorant, as in lacking in knowledge of the struggle and what it was like. I understood the struggle to a certain extent, being a single mum and having to say to work, I used to have to teach a night class, so I need to be able to balance this out and things because of Grace. So I have always understood that struggle. And even prior to that, as married, but with a child, there's not the awareness is limited, which seems bizarre considering that's what people do, have children. Do you know what I mean? That the population is based on the fact that it's increasing because people are having children, and yet the allowance for balancing your life with those children doesn't exist. And certainly as a single parent, it's a bigger fight. I think we know that each day in the workplace or trying to find work, wherever it is, that is on the forefront of our mind. That's where our battle lies. And we shouldn't have to battle. We shouldn't have to battle to balance our lives with our children and we shouldn't have to battle for the money to be able to give them a home and a life. Because prior to me coming out of work, the money I earned did pay for my bills, but I found that I was struggling, my mortgage, I found that I was struggling to get through. So I was doing other work to be able to give us a holiday and things like that, which also didn't feel right. So I was thinking, you know, I've worked really hard, as have so many people, obviously, I'm not just saying me. And when I got both my degrees, I was working full time. And so, but there seems to be no acknowledgement of what you've tried to do or anything. There's no limitation. There are sort of those shackles attached, and certainly as a single mum, more so they seem to be tightened somewhat. So the struggle is there every day, really every day.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing. And it is, there's so many interesting things that you've said there. You know, you like me, you were, because your employer, because your employment sort of fell through as a result of your status. Really, you couldn't live in your family home now, whereas you were able to sort of obviously rent that out because you had fortunately the opportunity to stay with your parents. Am I right?
Your mum, yeah.
Yeah, your mum. You know, I couldn't afford to live in my mortgaged property. I didn't have a parent to go to, and that's fine. You know, I'm certainly not, you know, point scoring. What I did do was rent it out and move into a cheaper flat. But then the mortgage company really did trick me. They were so helpful, and they said, "Oh, we'll take charge of the property." And what I didn't realise was by taking charge, because I was so worried about what if the boiler broke. I wanted to be a responsible landlady, you know, and I knew I'd be on a budget. And they said, "Oh, don't worry, you know, withhold your payments, we'll take charge of the property, and then any maintenance goes out of the mortgage, win-win." Of course, as soon as they had charge of the property, they evicted the tenant, repossessed the property. So my 10 years and £60,000 investment was just gone. And it was in the recession as well, so it was sold at a loss, leaving me with a £20,000 bill. And but this was all as a result of I couldn't still afford to live there and pay the mortgage. And then consequently, then I was forced into private rental. Of course, then a single mum, repossession, benefits, low wage. You know, who's going? You know, I was an estate agent. We do discriminate. You know, very subtly. You know, it was not in print anymore, but it still happens. So the only landlords that would have me, it was either properties in disrepair or more expensive. And obviously everybody wants the nice 2-bed 550, you know. So they're easy to go. But then you've got people like me left over. The landlords will take a risk on me. So the next several years was spent paying £58,000 into somebody else's estate. Because I was unable then to get a mortgage or save up a deposit, because I was taking payday loans to make up private rent. You know, the catastrophic effect, and my point is this simple tweak of flexibility in work, either a slightly reduced day or doing a few hours, and we've got a benefit of being single. I can work every night. I haven't got somebody to entertain. And I like that. When my daughter goes to bed, I can switch my brain on. You know, with my freelance paralegal work, I'm more than happy. I have meetings with clients at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We have a really good talk about what's going on with them. We've got an immense amount of flexibility and ability to sort of work. In children at home now, we're not being interrupted now. And even if we were, it wouldn't be an issue, because in the office you're constantly interrupted. And it's not always about work. It's like, "Oh, did you watch that thing on Sky last night? Yay." I was in the workplace for 20 years. Interruptions are normal. You know, what employees need to understand is our ability to be interrupted, but then continue with our work. And there shouldn't
be I think you're absolutely right with that as well. There's a sort of strict mindset, I think, when you go into employment or as an employer, as a boss or whatever, that it has to be this structure. And even for people, what I found quite shocking was even for people who, in my experience, managers who were female managers and had children of their own, so knew what it was like, but there was no bending to those rules. There was no loosening of those shackles at all. It was get the job done at any cost, at any expense. And now, I was a manager before that, and I was an area manager. I never treated my staff like that. I always had a flexibility with my staff. And it's only since I've started my own business now, and I've been looking back at things that I did in the past, what worked, what didn't, and so on, that I remember the things I used to do to them. But I think what's quite sad from it all, and I don't mean for me, I mean in general, is the fact that for us four that are on here now, as single mums and business women, is that we shouldn't have to be forced into entrepreneurship because of what's gone before. It's good that these difficult situations have brought out the entrepreneur in us, and the creative person, and what we can do next to help others. And all of us, all the four of us on here, have our businesses are that, aren't they? They're about what helps us and what helps others as well. So that's what we're all into, and that's what we've discovered. But it shouldn't have to be restriction and poverty and inflexibility that forces that creativity out of us at all. I mean, and it's beneficial for us that we've done this, and that our businesses will go on and thrive and so on, because of what we've chosen to do, and what based on what, well, for me anyway, based on what I did before and what I've realised has forced, if you like, this out of me.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit difficult, but that sounds a bit strange, but I mean, do you see what I mean? That it's
Sarah, this is exactly the point. You know, we are fighting to work where work has let us down, and we need that to be recognised, and we need it to be supported. I'm so grateful to all the women I network with who are married, because they will be very honest and open about it. It takes a few years to build up a business to the point where you can actually draw a wage from it. So we need more understanding there, so that we can be supported. Or we need, like you said, the way you treated staff is not the way that everybody treats staff. So this is where the government need to enforce it. So this is where we're reaching out to them and saying, look, you need to make policy change so that all of these large companies have a significant percentage of employees that are on a pro rata basis. Because what you're going to do is reduce that, what did I say earlier, £172 billion welfare bill. You can't expect them to understand what it feels like to be a single mum, but you can expect them to understand the money. And if they, you know, all employers aren't of the mindset, oh, well, you know, we can employ these women. We all know we can do brilliant things for 20 hours. We can go in somewhere for 20 hours a week, and we can move mountains. We can do that. And I think everybody who's attending this webinar today can probably relate to that too. This webinar is going to go so quick. It's already 10:35. I want Nahaya and Lydia to both take stage. You're going to have to do it for 5 minutes, guys. I'm sorry, so that the people who are watching, and I've got about another 10 slides as well. So I'm going to have a follow-up after this. I'll email all the attendees, and then I think we need to have an open conversation where everybody can join in. So we'll have a couple of follow-ups, because it's a passionate conversation. It's a conversation that needs to happen a lot. So Nahaya, just can you bring yourself in, or do you need me to unmute you? There we are.
No, that's fine. Hello. Yeah, so I mean, my journey, I'll try and be very quick. I found that just from the start of being pregnant, that there was issues. There was things that I was brought up against, challenges, and that's something that drew me to the Single Mums in Business Network when I recently became self-employed, because it's not just single mums, it's single mums that want to work. It's, you know, it's changing that stigma that, you know, people are lazy, they don't want to work. I do want to work. And anyone that has ever worked with me, that was managed by me, that's coached by me now, or co-worked with me in the past, knows that I am a hardworking person. I went to university, I've done level 5s, I'm still doing training courses now in fitness and my own development. So it's not about not wanting to work, it's about the support to work. Even when I became pregnant, I was full-time working as a children's residential worker. So it was 48-hour shifts. There was no way I could maintain that when I'd had a baby. And I was told, when I found out the maternity pay that you get, it didn't cover our rent. It didn't cover anything. And I was told by the benefits people that if I didn't get a job, if I got made redundant, then they would help me more. But which really just confused me. I thought the point was to try and encourage people to work and be able to sustain themselves. Then when my marriage broke down because of that struggle of trying to work, trying to give my all, I went into the management position at the children's home, which was meant to be 9 to 5. It wasn't. I was pretty much doing 7:30 a.m. till midnight some nights, because it was a high intensity job. There was a lot of responsibility, and I was essentially responsible for 3 teenagers who'd been through neglect, abuse, and all sorts of different issues, as well as then coming home absolutely drained, to my husband, to my daughter. And it took a massive mental impact, massive impact on our relationship. My marriage broke down, found myself single, and then struggled with childcare and fitting it all in. I got a disciplinary from my employer at the time for having to go and get my daughter. And there just wasn't that. They wouldn't even consider working from home, even though a lot of the work I was doing at the time was writing up reports, risk assessments, children's plans. And a lot of the time I was going home and having to sit for 3 hours on my laptop at home to get the work done, because it was impossible in an environment like that, with a lot going on, 15 members of staff coming in needing support as well. And to a point I loved it, but it completely burned me out. There's only so much I could do as a human, as a mum, as a person. And yeah, there's definitely been that stigma. I found it then. I had to move jobs because I just couldn't balance it anymore. I went into another job where they were a lot better, but again, there wasn't that allowance for working from home, even though again, a lot of the work I could do. And it's funny, it's not just about being a single parent. I've spoken to one of my best friends this morning, and they're in a couple and they're having the same thing. She's, a lot of her work can be done from home, but it's this attitude of, if I do it for you, I have to do it for everyone. And it's irrelevant. It's sort of like, well, and if that's what people need, then, I can be more productive working for 3 hours on my computer, getting it all done without those interruptions, like you said, in an office environment, than sat there for 8 hours and people chatting about, oh, what did you watch last night? Or, who wants a cup of tea? Or, I can manage myself well enough to have been able to work from home. And I think that's where there definitely needs to be a change. It needs to be looked at. And it is, I think, that hopefully this situation will make employers and the government more aware of the possibility that you can do both with the right support in place. And yeah, that's pretty much been my journey. And we've had this discussion before, Julie, where it's like, I would love to still be employed. I would love to still have that assurance of the money coming in, of, not having to do it myself. I'm a passionate person. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping people. But I would love to be able to do that in an employed setting, where I have got, the sick pay. I've rarely ever taken sick leave in my life, but to have that sort of flexibility and that assurance, it was a choice to go self-employed in a way, but also not, it was sort of pushed into it because there isn't any other choice most of the time.
Not if you want to earn a decent living, and that's the thing, and that is crucially the thing. And this is where we need to shine a light on this. Yes, there are jobs out there, but you wouldn't see this with men. And I'm sorry, this is the only time I'm going to be really sexist here, but if you have men who are CEOs or line managers or whatever, most men who are in sort of professional environments or solicitors or whatever, you would not see them go from that job and that salary into being a cook or a cleaner or a carer, because that's the only 3 jobs that they can do within school or childcare hours, and they would be paid 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds an hour instead of 15, 20, 25 pounds, 30 pounds an hour. They would kick and scream if it was down to them, the majority of them, to sort of procreate in this world, which we love our children, we want to be there for them, but it shouldn't be a financial penalty.
And another thing that's been raised is, so obviously I'm a mum, I'm a single mum, but even with my daughter's dad, he is still involved with her. But whenever it's been a case of, I need to do this, you need to have her, and he's been trying to get that from his employers, and it's been 2 different roles that he's been in, their response has always been, well, where's the mum?
Yeah.
And that's sort of still that attitude even for as a man trying to get that, it's been, well, where's the mum? Why can't the mum have her?
Yeah.
And that's the response that he's getting as well.
This needs greater governance, and the incentive for anybody watching this is this. The incentive for anybody watching this, if you don't feel passionate about this for your own personal reasons, understand the impact it's having on your pockets. If people need to top up their salary with benefits, public sector employees are going to be paid less. There's less money in the pot to pay NHS workers. There's less money in the pot to pay bin men or, anybody who works in the public sector. And there's less tax going into the system, because if we're not getting a wage that takes tax out of our wage every month, there's less tax going in and there's more tax coming out. And it's not through lack of willingness to work as a single parent or as a parent or as a primary carer. We are literally, our hands are tied behind our backs. We want to pay tax. We want to pay as much tax as possible. We want more money in the pot so that public sector people can be paid better, and so that there is more money generally for whatever it's anyway. But Lydia, come in before I go on a tangent.
Hi. So I'm going to try as quick as possible. So I've got a background in automotive, and I worked for corporate companies for about 15 years. And my last role I had was for quite a big, well-known corporate company. I was in automotive, but also in distribution and supply chain. And I was working on a SAP project, so IT. So quite passionate about that. I'm also a carer for my daughter, because my daughter does have additional needs, and we moved over from South Africa, so I don't have any support here, no parents, no family, anything. So as I said, I was working for the company, and I was very passionate, and I'm also a hard worker, always have been, and I applied for flexible working, obviously to care for my daughter, because she was at a point where she got diagnosed and it was really, really stressful. And I asked the question if I could have flexible working, and I was just told by my manager, no, you can't, because you won't be visible. And I thought, okay, that's, and then after looking into it further and further, I thought, well, that's, I don't find that right. And I did a bit of research in my gut was telling me, apply the proper way through HR. I eventually, and this was obviously working for the company for after 3.5 years, full time. And again, like Nahaya said, hours till midnight. And then I applied the correct way through HR, and I then got the flexible working, which was quite interesting. I reduced my hours, obviously reduced my pay, and then things just weren't working out, and I was able to sort of stop working even on flexible hours and become a full-time carer for my daughter, obviously going on benefits. And me as well, the whole benefit system stuff, I want to work, because I always feel I work and I don't want to just, get paid for these. But, I was almost forced to do it because I had no choice. And then I was able to care for my daughter, which I still do at the moment. However, I did a lot of studying in the, became a personal trainer, and was able to then work around my daughter's needs and her requirements, or not work, but actually study. And I'm in the process of slowly growing my business now on the side of still being a carer for my daughter and obviously getting benefits. But you know, I have got a big passion for, obviously, for working, and, you know, my drive is, if, like Nahal said, you know, if I could, I probably would still want to be working in big, you know, corporate companies, because the benefits are really good. You know, in South Africa, I was driving company cars and, you know, all that. And, you know, financially, I have struggled a lot, and I still do, because of the circumstances that you're forced to go on to benefits. I mean, I had to do odd jobs here and there, jobs that I thought, like, you know, I would never do, just to basically provide for my daughter. And I had to, you know, ask friends to help, like, months pay my rent and things like that, while I could basically just provide, you know, a house and food for her. So it has been a tough journey. And yeah, I do agree, you know, if companies did allow single parents more flexible working, you know, life would be a lot more easier and better for us single parents. So,
it would, yeah. Thanks so much, Lydia, and I'm so sorry I need to cut it.
no, it's fine.
So crucially, we know what we need. We know what needs to change. Okay, we absolutely know what needs to change. You, me, thee, and a million others. We know what needs to change. We need to push for these changes to be implemented at the top, because line managers aren't taking responsibility, employers aren't taking responsibility. They're being sheep instead of leaders. Okay, sorry guys, but it's true. So until that happens, we are doing what we can. We're making work. We are using our skill sets. We're working our butts off. We need to succeed, and in order to succeed, we need exposure to our businesses. Because with exposure comes clients, and with clients comes steady income, and with steady income comes, you know, obviously not struggling and no longer needing benefits. So that's what the Single Mums Business Network is about. It's about raising awareness of these changes that need to be made for the million other women out there who are currently being sold all sorts of schemes to work from home, which is another story. But, you know, they need help, and they need help now. Some of us have taken the leap and gone into self-employment. We need help with exposure with our businesses, so that we can have enough clients, so that we can make this work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the webinar. It's going to be difficult. We've only got about 12 minutes. We've got 15 participants. So guys, if you want to, bearing in mind this is being recorded and it's going to be shared publicly, if you want to turn on your cameras and microphones, please do come in. If you've got a specific question, pop it in the chat if you can, because I'll go through the questions in order that they pop in through the messages. You'll see at the bottom there's a little chat box, and you can ask a message there. Hi Jane, thanks for coming in. Is anybody else going to come in? And I want a message, so somebody fire away with a message or something like that. Hi Martine. Oh great, lovely to see you. Hi Joe. Hi Sharon. Thanks for coming in. There was actually an awful lot of content. Hi Joe, we've got two Joes, and there's a lot of content I didn't get through today. There's so much to talk about on this subject. It's such an important subject, you know. So we will do a follow-up webinar. I don't know when. Give me a couple of weeks, I'll share it. Because also I really want to hear from people. I want to do one more like this, where everybody's involved. So I want everybody's cameras and microphones on, so that we can have a more open discussion where everybody gets the opportunity to speak and ask questions. So I haven't got any questions. Has anybody got a question? Great, Joe, please turn on your microphone, or have I muted you?
Yeah.
Unmute all, there we are. Joe Rickson.
Yeah, sorry, I was just writing it out, but yeah, I'm more than happy to say it as well. So I work for Gingerbread, who hopefully some of you know as a charity that supports single parents. Thank you for the thumbs up. So we're looking at a project on the kind of post-COVID environment for single parents in work. So obviously very relevant for the discussions today. So what we're looking at is potentially a solution-focused project on kind of what the learnings of COVID-19 might be, and how we can institutionalize them to make sure that the employment environment is more secure for single parents. So what we're looking at is a increased push of flexible working, as employers recognize that physically being in the office or the shop floor is no longer as important as we might have thought it would be, and also childcare being recognised as a legitimate barrier, because as we've seen with the key workers, schools and nurseries have remained open. So obviously there is now a greater recognition that childcare is a significant barrier to parents going into work. So I'd be interested in you guys as to whether you think there's anything else that we should be focusing on in terms of how we can, you know, make sure we are harnessing the benefits of the kind of increased learning about those barriers that single parents face in the work.
Joe, crucially, what I would really like you to concentrate on, personally, if anybody else wants to in here as well, flexible working, yes, absolutely. We need changes there, but crucially, can we not just concentrate on support staff being where this flexible work is open? Because, you know, it's like the minute you need flexibility, you're pushed in support staff roles. We need every skill set and every pay scale, you know, every area of professional development and you know, solicitors and there's a lot of self-employed HR people and things like that, but journalism, the shop floor, there's in every sector, you know, you cannot be pushed. You only go on to a single mems or single parent thread on Facebook, and every single day you've got somebody saying, how can I work now with my children? And there's three answers that always come up: be a cleaner, be a cook, be a carer, or come and work for me for free. You only have to work 100 hours a week and you'll get paid a little bit and I'll get paid money for recruiting you. You know, there needs to be legislation and there needs to be governance around people who are told to work from home for free. You know, it's a massive, massive issue with parents who are desperate to work, but they need to do it within the barriers that are there.
Yeah,
thank you.
I agree with that. I love what you're saying as well about childcare being a legitimate barrier as well, Joe, because it is, and that's one thing that this has demonstrated, that yes, the schools are still open, and then, you know, that it is something that needs to be recognised by all employers. But again, as Julie was saying, that it is every role. I was a level 5 registered manager under Ofsted. My friend is a lawyer. I've got a friend who's one of the high NHS workers. So, and it's on every level that it's been affected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Joe, I'm happy to do some paid work for Gingerbread as well.
Okay, yeah, actually, yeah, I've been told you're someone I should get in touch with. So, yeah, watch the space.
Sorry. I mean, Isabel, I just want to take a moment to thank you, because Isabel is the lady who sort of made this happen today from the British Library. I know the British Library give an awful lot of information and advice around business, intellectual property. I don't know if you just want to take a moment, Isabel, just to let people know a bit more about that, as this is going to be shared far and wide, no doubt.
Thanks, Julie. And I can't take all the credit for teeing up today's webinar, because Remy, who was on here earlier, really did most of the legwork. But so just to say that the British Library has a business and IP centre and a whole national network of centres actually across the country who provide support for entrepreneurs and small businesses from that first, I've got a brilliant idea, what do I do with it? How do I protect it? How do I get to the idea to market and then grow? So it's all about giving people access to our fantastic databases. We have lots of business intelligence. We are the Library of the UK Intellectual Property Office, and we deliver workshops and one-on-one advice and mentoring day in, day out. Obviously now we're 100% online with webinars, so check out our website, which is www.bl/BIPC, standing for Business and IP Centre. And we're hoping to open our libraries, our library network. All of our centres are based in libraries, and we've got 13 across the UK, and we're opening another 2, one quite close to Julie in Worcester. So yeah, we are mainly focused on those people who want to become self-employed, who want to start up a business. But it's great to listen to your concerns today. And I wonder whether COVID-19, so Joe just mentioned he's looking post-COVID. I'll tell you, the British Library, people's ideas about flexible working from home have radically changed. I think more people will think it's much more possible, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show here we can have a meeting quite easily. And, you know, this is the wonderful thing about Zoom is when you have the professional package, you can literally leave it running. So I can be sitting here working at my computer all day. And if my boss says something, I'd say, oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll do that for you now, Emma. You know, we have got the technology now to be able to do it in most sectors, at least. But also, I think, Isabel, it's important because Joe, I think Joe might have disappeared, but not Joe, the other Joe.
There's one Joe left.
Yeah, Joe. Oh, Joe's back. So obviously we've got these two issues here. We've got one where we need work to work for the right pay, etc., etc. Yes, there are childcare barriers, but most women I speak to, what we don't want is childcare from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have children. We want to look after them. We can do both. But equally then going into the business side of things, obviously we've got the likes of the British Library, and there are lots of organisations out there who can help with this entrepreneurial journey. This is another area that we really need to address. It takes time. Now, most business owners that I speak to will admit that they could not draw a full-time salary for themselves in that first year of business. Yet our current benefit system says that you need to be drawing a full-time salary within 12 months of setting a business. You know, you need to build your business, you need to cover the business overheads, you need to, you know, you've got marketing, you've got stock and everything else. And sadly, the general consensus is that if you're a single mum in business and you're still in receipt of benefits, you're fraudulent. And that was very clearly evidenced with COVID-19, saying if you haven't evidenced your earnings in the last 12 months, we're going to assume that you haven't got any. We need to change the language with that. We need to stop making women who are fighting to work feel fraudulent. And we need to understand that it takes time to build this up. And we need all the support in the world to build this up during that time. Bearing in mind there's likely to be barriers to finance, barriers to marketing, barriers to premises for massage, things like that, you know, all of these kinds of things. So where we are making work through self-employment or business, we need the support to do that properly, and we need the government to understand that that might take a couple of years. Okay, so you know, everybody who's watching this will understand that and will help us share the words. And of course, we love our children; they're happy and healthy. Aren't you happy? Smile, child, smile, happy. So on that note, 2 minutes and then I'm going to be out, baby. Okay. On that note, yeah, on that note, has anybody else got any questions? Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Brilliant. We can talk more. So what I'll do is I'll send everybody the email, like I said, after the webinar. I'll close it on time because I have to behave. I'll share the content that I was going to share that I didn't. I'll share the feedback link. I will share the link to this live recording, which I guess I'll put on YouTube or something. And I look forward to following up with you all individually. I'll be really interested to know, those of you that have joined in today, I've got no idea who the participants are, which is new for me. So I actually want to hear from you all. I want to know what your situation is, what your circumstances are, where you need help, and where you think we can all work together to make improvements together. Because we all know that improvements need to be made. Okay, so I'll close the webinar unless, has anybody else got anything they want to quickly put out there before I close it? No. Okay, well guys, thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to take a coffee break, give my girl a hug, and I look forward to connecting with you all more here after today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.